Hi there folks, it's Daniel here, and in today's tutorial, what I'd love to do is take you through my process of culling inside of Lightroom. Now before I open up Lightroom and show you the process, I'm just going to talk about my process prior to Lightroom. Okay, this is the process of actually taking my images into the operating system. So I've got two drives connected to my computer right now. You've got work drive and we've got work drive backup. So my work drive is an external drive that's plugged into my computer that stores all of my client work. This drive is actually backed up to a second hard drive. So I've got two copies of my files, okay? When I get back from a shoot, the first thing that I do is create a named and dated file or folder rather for my client. So I'll right click anywhere inside of this drive and I'll create a new folder and I'll give it a name and a date. And I do it this way because it makes it easy for me to find my client work at operating system level. So let's say, for example, I want to look for Amy's shoots. If I type Amy here, all of the Amy shoots pop up on this drive over here, okay? So I'm able to find all of my files at operating system level here very, very quickly. So if, for example, Yana had to call me up and go, Dan, can I look back at those images? I can very easily find it on my system, open it up and send it back to my client, okay? So that's the way I've got it set up over here. It's set up very, very similarly inside of Lightroom. It's actually done automatically. If I open Lightroom over here, you're going to see the exact same setup over here. Work drive and then all of my client work going down here and it's all named and dated. So if I search for Amy again here, all of my Amy shoots will be listed right here at speed. Okay, so it makes the file search system very, very fast and efficient. Okay, so let's have a look at what we do from that point on. Okay, I keep my library module open over here like this, as you can see. Okay, and what I then do is I drag and drop my client folder into Lightroom straight away. Very, very simple. Okay. You need to make sure that you're in the library module. If you're in the development module and you try and drag that client folder into Lightroom, nothing happens, okay? You can see that it just sort of resets. It doesn't do anything. Make sure that you're in the library module like I've done now, and then drag and drop that folder that you've created for your client into Lightroom, and it invokes the import menu, okay? From the import menu, we've got a couple of options that we can look at, okay? Under file handling, click and open file handling because we want to look at how to build those previews of our raw files inside of Lightroom, okay? So remember, I'm shooting raw files, okay? So we've got different ways that Lightroom builds those previews that are shown inside of Lightroom. The first one over here is the minimal way. What it does is it creates a very small preview or small JPEG preview of your image. This isn't recommended because it's quite low resolution and you can't really check your sharpness of your image when you zoom into it, okay? So that's not really an option. From that point, we've got the embedded and sidecar. What will happen is Lightroom will extract that embedded JPEG file inside of your raw file and display it back to you inside of Lightroom, okay? It's also not the highest of qualities, but you can kind of check things from that point going forward, okay? Then you've got the standard preview size, and then you've got 1:1. I like to use the 1:1 option here because it builds a high quality preview of my image. So when I double check my sharpness, when I zoom into my image, I can actually verify that my image is nice and sharp and I can check all of the details. You'll see why in a moment, okay? So my go-to method here is selecting a 1:1 build preview. Now, be aware that when you've got the 1:1 build process selected, it may take a little extra time to import your files into Lightroom because what it's doing is it's building a 1:1 preview of your raw file, and it might take a little bit of time depending on the power of your computer. Now, I've got a pretty beefy computer here, so I'm automatically leaving it at 1:1. And then from that point, I actually click the import files button over here. Okay, this is all grayed out at the moment because I've actually got this particular shoot already existing in my Lightroom catalog. I'll then go import and I'll go and have a quick cup of coffee or carry on with a different project while that imports. Okay, so once we've got all of our images imported into Lightroom, I'm going to be talking about how most of us cull through our images. Most of us will select an image in the film strip here, and we'll kind of evaluate our image by zooming in, and we'll immediately say, okay, maybe this image is a 1 star. That's if you're using the star rating process for your culling. Okay, so you might give it a 1 star. How do we get this little star over here? We actually press 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on our keyboard to rate our images. So, for example, you might select 1 star for this because her eyes are closed, okay? Then you'll move on to the next image and you'll look at it and you go, oh yeah, this seems a little bit off in terms of our composition. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a 3 star. And, you know, this is just getting long and complicated. There's going to be a 5 star. And then we'll afterwards filter our images by how many stars we've given them, okay? I just find that this is a long and laborious way of culling, okay? Let's set this back to 0. All right, if you press 0 on your keyboard, you'll remove the stars, okay? So let's undo those stars. Right, the other way people cull their images is by pressing the P key for pick and then the X key for rejecting images. So they might go along and go, okay, you know what? This image I don't like. I'm going to press X on my keyboard and I'm going to reject the image. Okay. Again, it's a long and laborious process because we're going through each and every one of these images on a per image basis. You know, you might look at this image and go, yeah, let's reject that one as well. And we'll go through all of the images, rejecting and rejecting and rejecting. This is like kind of picking up a telephone and calling up all of your exes and going, hey, guess what? I've just rejected you. Okay, I'm rejecting you. It's a complete waste of time. It's irrelevant. Okay, so let's go back to these images and undo that. If you press U on your keyboard, you remove that flag. Okay, you remove that rejected flag very, very simply. Okay, let's look at the more efficient way of culling our images. I like to look at the culling process like I'm shooting, okay? When you're at a shoot, you don't want to have any distracting things around you. You don't want to have your social media and your phone open next to you. You don't want any of that. You kind of solely focusing on your subject and you're solely focusing on getting the best image you possibly can. This is the same process that I actually follow when I'm culling my images, okay? So the very first thing that I do here is enter into what I call the survey mode. Okay, so I press N for November on my keyboard and I get myself into survey mode here. Okay, it says survey and you see a little white outline around your image. This denotes that you're in survey mode. So you can see here survey and you can verify that by that little white bounding box around your image. Okay. Now I want you to make sure that if you select a range of images that you don't have auto sync selected. So let's say, for example, I'm looking at this film strip over here. I've identified that image 1 through to number 8 has got a similar pose. What I'm doing then is clicking Shift on my keyboard and clicking on number 8, and I'm selecting that entire range of images, okay? So that allows me to have a look at a bird's eye view of that set of images, and it allows me to quickly identify my favorites. Now, what I want you guys to make sure is that auto sync is switched off, okay? In this instance, it's switched off. By default, it might be switched on. It might look like that. I want you guys to make sure that this is turned off. The reason why is that if, for example, I select this image over here and I say, yes, that's a definite image that I want to select. If I press P for pick on my keyboard, I'll pick this image, but you see that all of our images are being flagged. That's not what we want to have done here, okay? If you make that mistake, simply click U on your keyboard to unpick all of those images, okay? Unflag them, in other words. What we need to do is just make sure that auto sync is switched off here, okay? So looking at this bird's eye view of my images, I want to just make sure that I haven't got any of these distracting panels next to me here. So I'm just going to press Tab on my keyboard to hide those panels away. Now I've got an unobstructed view of my shoot, okay? So with these thumbnails selected here, I'm able to quickly identify which is my favorite images. It's very, very simple, okay? So if I look at this, I'm liking this image over here. So I'm going to press P on my keyboard and I'm going to pick it. I'm going to go to this image over here and I'm going to go, yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to pick it. And they're going to say to me, well, Dan, how are you actually checking the focusing on those images? How do you know that that's actually fully in focus? Very, very simple. What I then do is I resize this window like this over here, okay? And I'm going to select half of my screen here. And then what I want you guys to do is click on this window number 2. As I wave my mouse over that, you'll see it says second window. Okay, let's have a look at that. There we go. It says second window. Click to show. I'm going to click it and I'm going to show a full screen view of the image that I've got selected. This allows me to quickly double check that everything is in focus. Okay, so that's how you do that. That's how you identify that that particular image that you've picked or you're looking at is actually in focus. Okay, let me just drag this out over here a little bit better. So now we've got a bird's eye view of that range of images, and we've also got a quick large view of the image that we've got selected. So if I come down to this image over here, I can verify that her eyes are slightly slanted over here or slightly closed over here, but at least the image is actually sharp. I kind of like that one because it's got a bit of an attitude to it, okay? And I'll press P on my keyboard and I'll flag it as a picked image, okay? From that point on, I'll go to the next range of images where she's posed very similarly. Okay, so from number 9 here through to maybe number 22, I'll hold down the shift key and I'll select that range. And again, I'll have a thumbnail view and an overview of all of the images shot in that particular series. And that again allows me to pick which ones I like. Okay, now this view here is fairly small. If you want to have a slightly bigger view of that range of images, I would recommend actually selecting fewer images. Okay, so for example, from 9 through to 15 will give you a slightly bigger view. But here's the cool thing, right? If you click on the little downward arrow over here, you can change this from a normal looped view to a live looped view. Okay, so for example, if I got it live, wherever my mouse goes on the screen here, it brings up that particular image in a full screen view. So that image there is now represented over here. Let me just view it there. Okay, so that particular image where I've got my mouse waved over is now represented in the large full screen view right here. Okay, so that allows me to double check that that image is one that I want. So I press P on my keyboard. I'll then move over to this image over here and I can see, yeah, that's a good one. And that one there, I've chopped off the hand slightly and it allows me to quickly zip through these images. Okay, so if I like that one, I'll just zoom in, make sure that the focus is set there. Now, every time I move the mouse over to the next image, it selects the next image. Okay, so just be aware that you might have to switch out of that view quickly into a normal looped view just to double check that particular image. So we'll zoom in and verify that it's nicely and sharp. Okay, again, moving over to next range here where we've got her slightly differently posed, and I'll select the rest of the images there and go, okay, that one, let's verify that it's sharp. I kind of like it. We'll select it by pressing P on our keyboard, and then we'll move into the next image, this one over here. That looks good. And as you can see, we're rapidly moving through. We're completely ignoring all of the images that don't cut the grade. Okay, if I go to this series over here, let's select those. Okay, you can see it ends here, number 37. I'm shift clicking and selecting all of those images in that range. I'm looking at this one here. I'm feeling it. Okay, out of these over here, out of these thumbnails, you can quickly determine, yeah, that one there. Okay, so exactly, that's what I'm doing. I can verify the focus very quickly here, and I press P, right? If I move on, I'm looking at this one over here maybe. I like the attitude there. Or this one over here. You can see more of the face. Let's pick it. So you get this general feeling very, very quickly. I like this downward look. Maybe not. I like this one over here where she's got her eyes closed and she's looking away. Pick it. Can you see how fast we're going through this process? Okay. So from 23 through to 37, we selected very, very quickly and efficiently. Okay. Again, the next set over here, I'm scrolling along and I'm seeing a very similar pose is. I'm selecting that range there, and I'm able to very quickly verify the sharpness. Maybe we'll go to number 2 here, and I'll press P on my keyboard to pick it. This one facing the camera, maybe I'll pick that one, and I'll continue the process like this, okay? So that series over there, if I look at this very, very quickly, I like this one over here, this little cutesy pose, and I'll pick it. I'll look at this one over here, the more confident pose, I'll pick it. So again, this is almost an artistic feeling, okay? We kind of going through this process and pretending that we're shooting again, all right? So let's have a look at the series over here, right? So she's pointing in this direction over here. We'll select that series there, okay? Again, let's have a look here. Got a feeling for that one. Is it? Nope. That one there, all right? Yeah, maybe, okay? Looking away from the camera. There we go. I like it. And you can see that this is a very fast process because you're kind of looking at the situation now and you're kind of taking yourself back to the shoot, and it's that instant impulse, that feeling that you get when you viewing these bird's eye view of your images and then making a selection based on that instantaneous feeling, okay? This one over here, I can see her eyes are slightly closed, so that's a no-go. This one over here, I like that little cheeky view there. Selected, okay? Here we go. We've got a slightly different pose with her hands behind her back. Let's go back into our loop view that changed to grid view by accident there. Okay, so there you go. With the hands behind the back. Boom, selected. Head slightly tilted. Boom, selected. Let's move on. Okay, so as you can see here, we're going through our images incredibly rapidly. All right, so if I look at this bird's eye view here, okay, these 6 images over here are all very similar. Let's pick out our best one there. Her eyes are slightly closed there, and we were able to verify that because we've got a large view of our image. Let's have a look at this one over here. Yes, maybe that one there. That's good. Let's move on. All right, so this one over here where she's got her hand on her hip, which one works the best for us? The one looking out in that direction there. Boom. Okay, this one over here. Boom. Good. Okay, that one over there. Boom. Good. Let's move on. And as you can see, as we move through these different poses and different positions, we're able to verify our picks or verify which ones that we like the most. Okay, so from this set over here, I can immediately tell from the thumbnail view, that one there looks pretty good. Okay, looking out in that direction, I'm zooming in on my full screen view here just to verify the focusing. Yes, I like it. Okay, going on to the next one. Zoom in. Yes, I like it. Okay. Here we've got ones where she's facing the camera a little bit more. Okay. She's got her eyes closed and we're able to view that one there. I like this one over here. The kind of sort of seductive look there. Boom. Picked that one. Moving on to the full body shots here that I photographed. Okay. Selecting that range of images. So very, very quickly. Let's have a look here. Right. This one over here with the hands behind the back. That looks pretty nice. Just verify the focus there. Beautiful. Oh, I love this light over here, by the way. Look at that light pouring in through there. That's awesome. Okay. Going over to the next image over here, you can clearly see that this hand's not really in a good position. We'll move on to the next one there. Let's just verify. Her eyes are slightly closed here. I kind of still like that. And this one over there, verified. Perfect. Okay. Now she's got her hand on her hat. Let's have a look at this image over here. No. Let's move along. Yes. Okay. You can quickly see that we're able to identify which is our good images by having this bird's eye view and simply selecting the image and having a full screen view very quickly and determining whether it's good or not. Then we move over to our next set over here. Okay. So our headshots. So we'll select the headshot series over here that goes through to image 138. Let's shift click and look at all of these over here. So quickly viewing these images, I can kind of identify that one there. I like that one. Pick it. P4 pick. Okay. I'm looking at this one over here. Boom. I like the way she's looking away from the camera slightly off into the distance. Okay. I like that look. There again. Eyes a little bit closed here. But from that series there, we've got 2 picked. Okay. Very, very quickly and efficient. Okay. So going through this series over here, where it's a 3/4 body shot. Let's have a look at this Over here, that one there. I like the way that one gels, okay? So as you can see here, we've got that sensation of feeling here. We're sort of quickly identifying visually which is the best images for us, okay? We've got that feeling. We've got that artistic nature coming out here. And this is an art form in itself, being able to select our favorite images from a series of images that really, really tick all of those boxes. I like this one over here, okay? Boom, just double checking the focus and picking it. Voila. Let's have a look at this one over here. The head position is slightly low. I'll move along, okay? Here's some more little headshots over here. So we'll select this series over here and verify which ones we like, okay? Maybe this one over here. As you can see here, we're having this bird's eye view, and this bird's eye view is allowing us to really quickly select the images that we want, okay? I like that one out of the series. This one over here, she's got her hands folded. I don't quite like the pose over here. So we'll move on to the next set of images, these over here. Boom. Let's have a look at this series over here. Over here, we can quickly identify that perhaps this one over here is the one to choose out of the series here, okay? Or maybe even this one over here where she's got her head slightly tilted back. I like that. It's again a sensation of feeling, folks, okay? This is what I want you to feel when you're going through this culling process. We're getting this bird's eye view of all of our images, and we're being able to detect which ones really, really tick all of those boxes, okay? So in this series over here, I like that one over here, okay? This particular set of images has been shot in natural light only, okay? That one over there, boom. And this is how we're going through this process, okay? Going over to the next range over here, right? Let's have a look at these images and select our favorites from these images right here. That one over there, maybe. Zoom in, verify, and check the sharpness. I like it. Moving along. This one over here. Love it. Moving along, okay? The hand disappeared around the corner over here. I kind of like it still. Moving on. Playing with the hair over here. Maybe this one over here. Moving along, okay? So we've selected our favorites out of that series there. Let's go over to this one over here. As you can see, I've changed my orientation. I've captured a few shots over there. Let's select our favorites over here. Not quite this one over here. The hand position doesn't quite gel with me. Let's get the feeling for this one over here. Kaboom. I like that one there. Let's have a look at this one over here. Looking slightly more at the camera. Maybe that one there. And again, as you can see here, rotating through these images at speed. Okay, so out of these four over here, you can see that those are the only four that I selected from the series here. Let's have a look at this one over here. Zoom in. It looks okay, but I think I sort of dismissed these ones over here. I might have been testing this out, but then I moved into that series over there. Let's have a look at these over here. Those 5 images there. Let's zoom in. Do I like it? Do I like the hand position? Yes, it looks nice. Pick it, okay? Her head position tilted slightly over here. You can see more of her face. You know what? I think I like this one over here. So out of those 5, that one there ticks all of the boxes here visually. That's what I want, okay? And as you can see, this is how I go through my process. Once it's all done, I close off this window over here by just clicking once on the box, and then I double click on the bar at the top here to get a full screen view of Lightroom. And then I bring back my panels on the side over here by pressing tab again, and then exiting out of our survey mode, I press E for Edward on the keyboard, okay? And this brings us back to the ordinary library view, okay? Now, how do I view all of those that I picked? It's very simple. Go over to your filter menu over here and click the little first flag here, and this will show you all of your picked images from the shoot, okay? So as you can see there, we picked out 49 images at high speed, okay? We weren't going through each image one for one. We weren't doing any star ratings. We weren't doing any rejections. We just focused in on our favorite images, the core images that we really, really liked from the shoot. And because we didn't have any of those distracting things around us, we were able to, again, replicate that shoot experience and get that feeling as to which one of those images out of those particular series were good for us, okay? So this is how I roll. This is how I cull my images inside of Lightroom. It's a very fast and efficient way of doing things, okay? For weddings, I'm normally blazing through a wedding of, say, for example, 3,000 images within 30 or 40 minutes. I've got my favorite, say, for example, 300 or 400 images selected, okay? That's how fast this process is for you, okay? Once you've got all of your favorite images selected and flagged like this, you can then, for example, export these images, or you may want to edit them first before you export them for your clients. You then export those images in a named folder, okay? What I normally do though is I bring up all of these flagged images. I'll then select all of them by pressing Alt-A or Command-A if I'm on a Mac. I'll select all of my images and then I will give them a custom name. So what I normally do is I go in, select custom name and sequence. Okay, this is important, sequence. Then I give it a custom name, and then I'll sequentially rename all of these files so that it gives you an order from 1 through to whatever we've got selected here. 1 through to 49, for example, would be Simcha and the sequential number. Okay, so I'll rename all of my images in sequence, and then I'll export them out of Lightroom, and I'll send it over to my client through services like Zenfolio. And once that client comes back to me and says to me, okay, Dan, I really like number 39 in the series over here, and then I will use my rating, my star rating. Okay, let's just undo these selections here. I'm just going to deselect those. So for example, they come back to me and tell me, Dan, I really like number 39. I will then go in and press 5 on my keyboard to give it a star rating. In that way, I know exactly what my client has selected. So I can then filter all of my client's selections by clicking the star rating here, and it's going to indicate all of the 5-star images. The 5-star images, essentially for me, is the images that my client has selected. Okay, so there you have it. Just to recap, I'm importing all of my images into Lightroom. I'm building those one-to-one previews, and then from that point, I'm going into my survey mode and making the selections of my images in a very, I would say, maybe aggressive method of selecting my images. Okay, but the key thing here is that I'm really going through this culling process at speed and really looking at it from an artistic point of view and selecting images that really tick the boxes. I know that when I send these images over in a proof gallery to my clients, I know for a fact that I really love those images. Okay, I've picked out the best of the best from the series and I'm sending those to my clients. So I know that when they come back to me and they say, okay, Dan, I like number 5, I like number 10, I like number 14, I can confidently go ahead and edit those and know for a fact that I really love them because I know that I handpicked those images for them. Okay, so folks, there you have it. That's my culling process inside of Lightroom. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Ciao for now.